Anyway, we'll go there after the what have you. We'll brace the kid. Should be a pushover.
We'll be near the In-N-Out Burger.
Shut the up. When Joel and Ethan Coen released The Big Lebowski in 1998, audiences were unsure what to make of it. It underperformed at the US box office and puzzled plenty of critics. Then the movie found its life on home video and midnight screens and slowly became one of the most quoted and re-watched cult films ever made. What looked like a Shaggy Dog story is actually a carefully layered satire of American life, full of surreal dream sequences, pinpoint dialogue, and characters you never forget. Here are 25 strange and fascinating facts that show why this film refuses to fade, including who the dude was really based on, why Walter is not modeled on a real Vietnam vet, how the music was chosen with T Bone Burnett alongside a quiet score from Carter Burwell, and how the movie was first honored abroad before the US added it to the National Film Registry.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Fact 1. The dude was based on a real person. Jeffrey "the Dude" Lebowski wasn't pure invention. The Coen Brothers loosely based him on Jeff Dowd, a real-life film promoter and activist who was part of the Seattle Seven, a group of anti-Vietnam War protesters arrested in 1970. Dowd moved to Hollywood, got involved in indie film distribution, and became known for his shambling vibe, love of white Russians, and even the nickname "the Dude." He once said of the film, "It's not an imitation of me, but it's a capturing of the spirit of me." On rewatch, it's clear how much Bridges' Dude walks the line between fiction and biography, a cult figure born from another cult figure. Fact 2. Written for Goodman and Buscemi, not originally for Bridges. Joel and Ethan Coen have said they wrote Walter and Donnie with John Goodman and Steve Buscemi in mind, but they did not have a specific actor set for the dude during writing and early casting. One early name they considered was Mel Gibson before they moved on to Jeff Bridges, who ultimately defined the role. For balance, Jeff Bridges has recalled the Coens telling him at a party that they were writing something for you, which he later connected to Lebowski, but the contemporaneous record points to only Goodman and Buscemi being written to from the start. Why the chemistry feels so natural? Walter and Donnie were tailor-made for Goodman and Buscemi, and Bridges then shaped the dude into something unmistakably his, which is why their rhythms feel so organic on rewatch. Fact 3. The dream sequences hide Easter eggs. The dude's surreal dream sequences, like floating over Los Angeles or bowling through psychedelic alleys, weren't random. They're packed with callbacks. Saddam Hussein as a bowling alley clerk, Maud's artistic monologues turned into fantasy, and visual jokes that mirror real dialogue. On rewatch, these sequences act like subconscious Easter eggs. Every bizarre image comes from something we've already heard or seen, proof that even the dude's wildest visions are rooted in the strange world around him.
I'm the dude, so that's what you call me, that or...
Fact 4. Walter wasn't based on a Vietnam vet. Walter Sobchak, the dude's foil, is often mistaken as being modeled on a real Vietnam veteran because of his combat-obsessed rants. In truth, the Coens drew inspiration from their friend John Milius, the legendary screenwriter behind Apocalypse Now and Conan the Barbarian. Milius was known in Hollywood for his gun collections, right-wing politics, and over-the-top personality, traits the Coens exaggerated into Walter. Interestingly, Milius never served in Vietnam. He was rejected by the Marines because of asthma, though he carried himself with the swagger of a soldier. Walter's fictional vet status, grafted onto Milius's real-life bombast, created the perfect counterweight to the dude's pacifism. Fact 5. The film bombed before becoming a cult classic. The Big Lebowski cost about $15 million to make and earned just $18 million domestically, a disappointment compared to the Coens' earlier hit Fargo. Critics were divided, some calling it unfocused or indulgent, but on VHS and DVD, it exploded in popularity, eventually grossing over $46 million worldwide and inspiring annual Lebowski fests. On rewatch, it's hard to believe the movie wasn't a hit. Its dialogue, style, and tone were simply ahead of their time. It took audiences a few years to catch up to the dude. Fact 6. The rug really did tie the room together. The plot kicks off when thugs mistake the dude for the other Jeffrey Lebowski and urinate on his rug. That rug becomes the movie's running gag. So much so that "it really tied the room together" is one of the film's most quoted lines. The Coens intentionally wrote the rug in as a MacGuffin, a meaningless object around which the whole absurd plot revolves. On rewatch, the rug works like a wink from the Coens. The dude's obsession with replacing it is both trivial and profound, a joke about how even the laziest stoner needs something to care about. The rug is the movie's Easter egg for the absurdity of purpose itself. Fact 7. Casting what ifs could have changed everything. While Jeff Bridges was the first choice for the dude, other roles nearly went very differently. Gene Hackman and Anthony Hopkins were rumored for the elder Lebowski. Marlon Brando was mentioned in early conversations for Jackie Treehorn, though he passed away before production. Even Mel Gibson was floated by the studio for a supporting role before the Coens shot it down. It's strange to imagine The Big Lebowski with anyone else. On rewatch, Goodman's Walter, Moore's Maud, and Bridges' Dude feel so perfectly matched it's hard to believe the studio ever considered alternatives. Fact 8. The Dude's wardrobe came from Jeff Bridges. Much of the Dude's costume wasn't created by the wardrobe department. It came straight out of Jeff Bridges' real closet. Bridges suggested wearing his own clothes to keep the character authentic, including the famous jelly sandals and slouchy cardigans. On rewatch, the Dude's laid-back fashion feels lived in because it was. The Easter egg here is that Bridges didn't just play the Dude. He dressed like him off-set, too. Fact 9. Donnie's death wasn't random. It's debated whether the Coen brothers planned Donnie's fatal heart attack from the very first draft, but what's clear is that it was never meant to be a throwaway gag. Steve Buscemi, usually cast as a fast talker, Reservoir Dogs, Fargo, was deliberately given a quiet, confused role here. His constant, "What's that, dude?" interruptions set him up as the odd man out. On rewatch, the foreshadowing is subtle but deliberate. Donnie uncharacteristically misses a strike just before collapsing, then clutches his arm, a classic heart attack symptom. His sudden, pointless death coming right after the scuffle with the nihilists pulls the rug out from under the comedy and drives home the Coens' theme. Life's chaos is often cruel and meaningless. Film theorists often argue that Donnie's passing isn't about him at all. It's about showing the futility of Walter and the Dude's absurd misadventures, where the only real consequence falls on the innocent bystander. It's why his death lingers so uncomfortably, a joke framed as tragedy, and tragedy framed as a joke. Fact 10. The bowling alley wasn't the main stage, but it mattered. It's a myth that most of the film happens in the bowling alley. In truth, much of the story unfolds elsewhere, in the Dude's rundown apartment, the Big Lebowski's mansion, Jackie Treehorn's pad, and scattered corners of Los Angeles. But the bowling alley does carry a symbolic weight. It serves less as an athletic arena and more as a social sanctuary, where the Dude, Walter, and Donnie drink, argue, and ramble about nothing. The irony? The Dude himself is never shown bowling in a real game outside of a surreal dream sequence. Walter, meanwhile, treats the lanes as his battleground for rules and pent-up Vietnam trauma, while scenes like Market Zero and the flamboyant Jesus Quintana's entrance show how the Coens use bowling not for sport, but for character conflict. The location itself, Hollywood's Star Lanes in East Hollywood, was chosen because of its retro Americana vibe. Sadly, it was demolished in 2002, making the film a nostalgic time capsule for a place and a ritual that no longer exists. Fact 11. The Dude's White Russians became iconic. Jeffrey Lebowski drinks 9 White Russians throughout the film, always mixing vodka, Kahlua, and cream or milk. The Coens didn't invent this. It was already Bridges' go-to cocktail. After the movie's release, sales of Kahlua skyrocketed, and White Russians became the Dude's cultural signature. On rewatch, the drink acts like an Easter egg, a symbol of the Dude's refusal to complicate life. Each White Russian is the same comforting ritual in a world that's constantly unraveling. Fact 12. Walter's "Am I the Only One Around Here?" was scripted, not improvised. The Coens are famous for precise dialogue and minimal on-set improv. John Goodman has said people often assume scenes were improvised, but of course they weren't. The only line he recalls that was not written by the Coens is Jeff Bridges calling Lebowski a human paraquat, added in rehearsal. Jeff Bridges has also explained that the dialogue only feels improvised. When filming, they stuck to it, treating the words like music and aiming to place every man and F-bomb exactly where the Coens wrote it. Fact 13. The stranger wasn't pointless. He was the storyteller. Sam Elliott's cowboy narrator, the stranger, is sometimes brushed off as having no purpose in The Big Lebowski. But that's not true. His role is subtle, deliberate, and deeply important. The stranger opens and closes the movie, framing the dude's misadventures as a kind of modern folktale. His voice doesn't just set the scene, it turns absurd Los Angeles chaos into something mythic and timeless. He's also the impartial observer. Calm, philosophical, and utterly unfazed, the stranger contrasts sharply with Walter's explosions and the dude's confusion. As Sam Elliott himself explained, this cowboy has seen everything but doesn't judge. And that's where the real depth lies. Some viewers see him as a stand-in for the Coen Brothers, reminding us that this story is a tall tale. Others interpret him as a Greek chorus, offering moral perspective from the sidelines. And yes, some even suggest he's a ghostly Western archetype, or maybe even God himself, drifting through the story, guiding the dude without ever interfering. Sam Elliott recorded all his lines in a single day, but his presence lingers long after. The stranger isn't pointless. He's the film's storyteller, its philosopher, and its wink to the audience that The Big Lebowski was always meant to be a parable, not a puzzle. Fact 14. The film's language spawned a religion. The dude's philosophy of taking it easy inspired fans to create dudism, an officially recognized religion with hundreds of thousands of followers worldwide. It preaches relaxation, simplicity, and abiding in the face of life's chaos. On rewatch, the dude's casual lines take on new weight. What started as a running joke about laziness has become a spiritual guide for some, proof of how far cinema can spill into reality. Fact 15. The film references Raymond Chandler's novels. The Coens admitted the story structure of The Big Lebowski was inspired by Raymond Chandler's detective novels, especially The Big Sleep. Like Chandler's plots, the film is filled with confusing twists, red herrings, and characters who may not even matter to the mystery. On rewatch, you see the Easter eggs everywhere: smoky LA settings, femme fatales like Maud, and Labyrinthian dialogue. The twist is that Chandler's detectives were tough guys, while the Coens replaced theirs with a stoner who just wants his rug back. Fact 16. The soundtrack was hand-picked, but it did have a score. It's true that The Big Lebowski is remembered for its eclectic soundtrack, but it's not true that the movie had no score at all. The Coen Brothers, working with music supervisor T Bone Burnett, handpicked nearly every song to reflect the dude's state of mind. They already had tracks like Kenny Rogers' Just Dropped In and the Gypsy King's Spanish version of Hotel California in mind before filming. And of course, the dude's obsession with Creedence Clearwater Revival shines through. Jeff Bridges even carried CCR cassettes on set to stay in character. But alongside all those iconic needle drops, the film does feature an original score by Carter Burwell, a frequent Coen collaborator. His music is subtle, often overshadowed by the soundtrack's bold choices, but it weaves through key scenes and helps tie the story together. So yes, the dude abides by mixtapes, but Burwell's score is still part of the film's DNA. On rewatch, the soundtrack feels like another character, while the quiet score sits in the background, holding the chaos together. Fact 17. Jesus Quintana became a cult icon, not a controversy. Some say John Turturro's Jesus Quintana sparked controversy, but that's not really true. What he actually sparked was fan obsession. Despite appearing on screen for less than 5 minutes, the flamboyant bowler with purple jumpsuits and unforgettable swagger became one of the most iconic characters in The Big Lebowski. His bizarre one-liners, finger-licking rituals, and strut down the lanes turned him into a cult favorite. In fact, Turturro has said that for years after the movie, fans would approach him asking, "When's Jesus coming back?" That constant demand is what led him to write, direct, and star in a spin-off film, The Jesus Rolls, released in 2020, giving the character what Turturro called another life. Yes, Quintana's backstory in the original film is disturbing, but the reaction to the character wasn't outrage. If anything, his grotesque energy became part of the Coens' signature mix of absurdity and menace. On rewatch, his presence is less about controversy and more about how one side character can steal the spotlight and haunt the film long after he leaves the screen. Fact 18. The Dude was based on real people, but not Abby Hoffman. The Coen brothers have said the main model was Jeff Dowd, a film promoter and activist who was part of the Seattle 7, an anti-Vietnam War protest group. The Dude even references that history directly in the movie when he tells Maude he was one of the Seattle 7, though he adds, with typical Dude timing, me and 6 other guys. But Dowd wasn't the only source. The Coens also borrowed details from their friend Peter Exline, a Vietnam vet who lived in a cluttered Los Angeles apartment. It was Exline who had the famous rug that really tied the room together, and who once found a kid's homework in the back of his stolen car. These anecdotes flowed straight into the script. Jeff Bridges himself even brought pieces of his own past into the role, from wardrobe items out of his closet to a general 1970s slacker energy that helped give the Dude his lived-in authenticity. So while Hoffman was a real counterculture icon, the Dude wasn't based on him. Instead, he's a composite, part Jeff Dowd, part Peter Exline, part Jeff Bridges, and all Coen Brothers alchemy. On rewatch, the Dude doesn't just feel like a character, he feels like a relic of American history, a radical turned into comedy. Fact 19. The Coens won abroad, but not in Italy. It's often said that the Big Lebowski picked up awards in Italy, but that's not true. The film never won the Golden Chiak Award. What it did win was the Golden Aries Award in Russia, given by the Russian Guild of Film Critics for Best Foreign Film in 1998. Russian audiences connected quickly with the Coens' absurdist humor and offbeat noir style, long before American critics caught on. Back in the US, the movie underperformed at the box office and landed with mixed reviews. Many critics thought it was too strange, too rambling, or too unfocused. But abroad, especially in places like Russia, the film's surreal energy resonated immediately. The irony? A story about a stoner bowler from Los Angeles found its first real recognition halfway around the world. The Dude abided internationally before he ever became a cult hero at home. Fact 20. The Dude Abides was never almost cut. That closing moment when the stranger tells us, the Dude abides, isn't just an offhand remark. It's the film's philosophy in a single phrase. Amid the chaos of kidnappings, nihilists, and Walter's outbursts, the Dude survives, not by conquering, but by enduring. Joel and Ethan Coen crafted the line as the natural end to the story, giving the Dude his worldview in words. Life may be messy, unfair, or absurd, but you roll with it. And over the years, these 3 words have become bigger than the movie itself. The Dude abides is now a cultural mantra, printed on posters, tattoos, even used in philosophy classes. Proof that sometimes the simplest line carries the heaviest truth. Fact 21. The Dude's bowling isn't that great. For a movie set almost entirely in bowling alleys, you rarely see the Dude actually bowl. That was intentional. Jeff Bridges admitted he wasn't a strong bowler, and the Coens leaned into the joke by showing Walter's intensity and Jesus' flamboyance while the Dude mostly drinks White Russians or wanders around. On rewatch, the lack of bowling becomes an Easter egg about distraction. The movie isn't about the game at all. It's about the way people circle their problems, rolling frame after frame without ever hitting the real target. Fact 22. The script used exact dialogue loops. One of the Coens' strangest techniques was repeating phrases verbatim across different characters. "This is not Nam, this is bowling," or "Obviously you're not a golfer," are echoes of noir-style dialogue loops. The trick was deliberate. Dialogue circles back just like the film's plot circles back to the rug. On rewatch, these repetitions work like hidden threads. They remind you that Lebowski's world is self-contained, absurd, and ritualistic, language as circular as bowling itself. Fact 23. Julianne Moore's Maude was based on real artists. Julianne Moore modeled Maude on performance artists like Cara Lee Schneemann and Yoko Ono. Her strange mid-air harness entrance and abstract monologues about feminism reflect the avant-garde art world of 1970s New York. Moore even helped choreograph her own bizarre dialogue rhythm. On rewatch, Maude feels like an inside joke about art culture. She's both parody and homage, embodying how the Coens used real-world references to make their surreal comedy feel strangely authentic. Fact 24. The film created a real-life festival. Since 2002, fans have gathered annually at Lebowski Fest, an event featuring bowling, costume contests, and screenings. Jeff Bridges, John Goodman, and other cast members have appeared. The festival has spread to multiple cities and even abroad, turning a box office disappointment into a living, breathing cult ritual. On rewatch, you realize the film predicted its own fandom. The bowling alley setting became not just a backdrop, but a blueprint for the way people would celebrate it forever. Fact 25. The film was added to the National Film Registry. In 2014, The Big Lebowski was selected for preservation by the Library of Congress's National Film Registry, recognized as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. It now sits alongside classics like Casablanca and The Godfather. On rewatch, that honor feels surreal. A stoner comedy once dismissed as a flop now ranks among America's great cultural treasures. The Dude abides, officially. Bonus fact. The Dude's house was real and is still standing. The Dude's bungalow, located in Los Angeles' Venice neighborhood, is a real house that still exists today. Fans often visit to snap photos, treating it like a pilgrimage site alongside filming locations such as the bowling alley, before its demolition. The home has become a shrine to cinematic slacking. On rewatch, the house feels less like a set and more like an extension of the Dude's identity. Run down, cozy, and entirely authentic. Knowing it's still standing lets fans abide with the Dude in real life. The Big Lebowski began as a misunderstood Coen experiment and grew into a cultural legend. A rug that tied the room together. White Russians as a life philosophy. Dream bowling alleys and rules that are not nom. Fans built Lebowski Fest. Russia's critics handed it a golden Aries. In 2014, the Library of Congress said it is culturally and historically significant. Through it all, one idea stays simple and true. The Dude abides. Want the next deep dive on another strange classic? Like and subscribe. This is Strange Flick Facts, where we uncover the bizarre truths behind your favorite films.